Hello and welcome to this channel. It was considered a commonplace in classical antiquity to say that happiness belongs, along with immortality, to the gods. On the contrary, to be human, they thought, was to be unhappy and mortal, so much so that it was considered a bad omen to be too lucky, because this was supposed to attract the reaction of the gods. This prejudice rests on some important truths, and we, living in modern times, could use some of that wisdom too. Happiness is not something completely out of reach for humans. In the Golden Age, people lived a happy life in communion with the gods. It was only after the fall from this age that we got into our current condition. This is why you will find in various philosophers the theme of reaching back to the blessed age of Kronos and obtaining happiness. This current condition of ours is not without a cure. Now, if you listened into other talks from this channel, you probably know already that when I'm talking about the fall from the Golden Age, I'm not talking about the fall of Adam. These are two distinct realities with different outcomes. In my talk on the fallacy of esoteric Christianity, I detail this. The biblical event that corresponds to the fall from the Golden Age is the creation of Eve, and that is presented as something essentially good by Moses. In Hesiod, on the other hand, Pandora is indeed a divine gift to man, but it is given as a punishment in disguise. We are very far away from the biblical interpretation of the separation of the sexes. The confusion between the fall from the Golden Age that brought with it, among many other effects, the separation of the sexes, and the fall of Adam can be observed since early on in the history of Christianity, in errors like that of linking the loss of paradise by Adam and Eve to sex. As Catholic dogma insists, original sin has nothing sexual about it, and it's all about pride. The real tragedy of the biblical fall is that it was avoidable, and because of that it will have a definitive solution. The fall from the Golden Age, however, was in the order of things. It was something necessary for us humans to accomplish our vocation. So our current unhappiness is integral to our condition. In fact, the solution offered by the different philosophical schools to this problem were all about escaping human condition altogether and become similar to the gods. Another thing that emerges from the study of salvation offered by the different philosophical schools of antiquity is the association of happiness, wisdom, and immortality. Even for Epicurus and his disciples, who did not offer a way to immortality, the road to happiness had to go through an elegant avoidance of the thorny question of death. So on one hand you have happiness, immortality, and wisdom. On the other hand, you have unhappiness, mortality, and ignorance. Human condition is defined by these last three, and they are essential for us in fulfilling our vocation. There are two things that you will find at the origin of our unhappiness. The first one is that we humans do not have a human nature, as gods have a divine nature, beasts have a beastly nature, or plants have a plant-like nature. The second is that our human nature, as it is fragmentary. The fact that we don't have a human nature proper to ourselves has been reaffirmed since antiquity to the Renaissance. This is what the pagan Platonist Iamblichus had to say on the subject at the end of antiquity. Quote, "Man deprived of sense and intellect together is reduced to the condition of a plant. Deprived of intellect alone, he becomes a brute. Deprived of irrationality, but yet remaining in possession of intellect, he becomes similar to a god." That's from the Exhortation to Philosophy in the translation of Thomas Moore Johnson. Humans have various levels of faculties in their soul, and depending on which faculty will they prefer to feed, they can become divine or subhuman. Pico della Mirandola, in his so-called Oration on the Dignity of Man, explains, quote, "The brutes, from the moment of their birth, bring with them, as Lucilius says, from their mother's womb, all that they will ever possess. The highest spiritual beings were, from the very moment of creation, or soon thereafter, fixed in the mode of their being which would be theirs throughout the measureless eternities. But upon man, at the moment of his creation, God bestowed seeds pregnant with all possibilities, the germs of every form of life. Whichever of these a man shall cultivate, the same will mature and bear fruit in him. If vegetative, he will become a plant. If sensual, he will become brutish. If rational, he will reveal himself a heavenly being. If intellectual, he will be an angel and the son of God. And if, dissatisfied with the lot of all creatures, he should recollect himself into the center of his own unity, he will there become one spirit with God in the solitary darkness of the Father, who is set above all things. Himself transcend all creatures." That's from the Oration on the Dignity of Man in the translation of Robert Caponigri. And a few lines later he returns to the same theme. Quote, If you see a man dedicated to his stomach crawling on the ground, you see a plant, not a man. If you see a man bedazzled by the empty forms of the imagination, as by the vials of Calypso, and through their alluring solicitations made a slave to his own senses, you see a brute, not a man. If, however, you see a philosopher, judging and distinguishing all things according to the rule of reason, him shall you hold in veneration, for he is a creature of heaven and not of earth. If, finally, a pure contemplator, unmindful of the body, wholly withdrawn into the inner chambers of the mind, here indeed is neither a creature of earth nor a heavenly creature, but some higher divinity, clothed with human flesh." According to Pico, the greatness of man that the Hermetic Asclepius is talking about consists in this openness to become whatever he decides. We can become whatever we decide because we are not something in particular. Angels are angels, beasts are beasts, because they all have natures of their own. We humans don't. It is not hard to see how this will make us unhappy creatures. We can't simply rest in our own nature. We are called to become something. We are called to be constantly on the road. This makes us essentially aliens in the cosmic order, because we don't have a place of our own. In the great chain of being, we humans are not one particular link. Gods or angels are a particular link. Beasts represent a particular link. Plants are a particular link on it. But we humans can ascend or descend along the chain in a way no other being can, since we don't have a fixed place. You can imagine how this lack of a proper place in the cosmic order will alienate us from the cosmic order. And this alienation can't fail to make its effects felt in our lives. We are restless beings condemned to wander around the world, never having a definite place of our own. Why are we in this situation I will discuss in a moment. The second reason for our unhappiness is a fractured nature that we have after the fall. This fall that the classical tradition talks about, and should not be confused with the biblical fall, consists in the passage from wholeness to being a fragment. Western sacred traditions join other traditions around the world in seeing the human being as a microcosm. This comes as a direct consequence of what we have just seen about humans not having a nature of our own. Our different faculties correspond to the different levels of reality, so we recapitulate in ourselves the whole cosmic order. That is how we can become whatever we choose to become. We can cultivate the faculties that assimilate us to the angels, or we can cultivate those parts of our soul that will make us beasts. Under these conditions, we have a dual condition. On the one hand, we are an image of the whole cosmic order. On the other hand, we are a fragment of the cosmic order. We are both microcosms and fragments of a macrocosm in the same time. This passage from being a self-sufficient microcosm to remaining just a fragment of the macrocosm is expressed in the mythical language as a fall from the Golden Age. This way, the descriptions of the Golden Age that we find in antiquity start to make sense. In that age, people were coming out of the earth spontaneously. There was no such thing as sexual reproduction. There were no political institutions, and society was not hierarchical. Relations between humans and gods, between humans and the animal world, and between humans were harmonious. There was no such thing as enmity. These mythical images can be decoded if we apply to them the key that I just mentioned before. The Golden Age corresponds to the reality of the human microcosm, as opposed to the subsequent 3 ages, including the current one, that correspond to the reality of humans as fragments of a larger macrocosm. Society itself, with its hierarchy, as we know from Plato, is an image of the whole cosmic order. In other words, the social hierarchy is a microcosm in relation to the whole cosmic order, but a macrocosm in relation to the individual humans. The erotic union of a man and a woman represents the sacred union of the 2 primordial principles that generate the cosmic order. Therefore, erotic love is a bond that represents a microcosm relative to the whole cosmic order, and a macrocosm relative to the 2 people involved. If we understand the role of a hierarchical society and of a love bond, that both constitute macrocosms within which individual people are only fragments of a larger whole, we will understand why in the Golden Age neither was present. Now, human happiness is something for the Golden Age, not for the subsequent ages like ours. Therefore, social standing or erotic love will never offer happiness, just momentary satisfaction. Social standing and erotic love define people in their relation to other people, so both of these confirm people in their fragmented condition. Why are we humans like this? Why is that we don't have a nature of our own like other beings? And if we embrace the whole cosmic order within the hierarchy of our soul's faculties, Why do we fall into this fragmented condition that characterizes human history from the Silver Age onwards? This is what the Platonist Macrobius has to say. Quote, "His designation of the universe as a temple of God was appropriate too, and was for the edification of those who think that there is no other God except the sky itself and the celestial bodies that we are able to see. In order to show therefore that the omnipotence of the supreme God can hardly ever be comprehended and never witnessed, he called whatever is visible to our eyes the temple of that God who is apprehended only in the mind, so that those who worship these visible objects as temples might still owe the greatest reverence to the Creator, and that whoever is induced into the privileges of this temple might know that he has to live in the manner of a priest. In the above passage we are also informed in words that cannot be mistaken that such divinity is present in the human race, that we are all of us ennobled by our kinship with the heavenly mind." That's from the commentary on the Dream of Scipio, the first book, chapter 14, second paragraph. Macrobius is here repeating another commonplace of the Western traditions, that the cosmos is a temple in which humans are priests. Our vocation is that of being mediators. We are the linchpins that keep together the various levels of being, levels that can be all found within the hierarchy of our soul. We don't have a particular nature because we carry within ourselves all the cosmic levels. We are, each one of us, a microcosm because we are priests. That is our defining nature. And this is where our fragmentic condition comes from after the fall from the Golden Age. We humans have to realize all the possibilities within the cosmic order, and that goes for the flow of history also. The unfolding of history follows the same rules as any other unfolding of the cosmic order, so history will reflect the unfolding of the cosmic levels along the world axis. We have an analogy between the cosmic order, the social order, the structure of the human soul, and the structure of history. The unfolding of human history consists, therefore, in bringing to prominence the various levels of society and the corresponding levels of the human soul, just as the cosmic order itself is an ordering of the various levels of being along the world axis from the first principle to the material principle. Society and the soul have three main levels: the sacerdotal level, corresponding to the intellect, the military aristocracy, corresponding to the will, and the so-called third estate, as it was known in the Middle Ages, corresponding to the desires. The first one integrates human society into the larger cosmic order. The military aristocracy represents the ordering vocation of humanity, transmitting the divine influences from the sacred center towards the periphery, and the last one applies the ordering vocation to the material level. Consequently, there are several ways to be human, and during a complete cycle, we have to fulfill all of these possibilities. We can be humans by traveling to other worlds and keeping our own world aligned to the cosmic order. This is the priestly vocation, and we do this by following traditional wisdom. Societies that concentrate on this will not leave behind too many material remains, and modern historians will consider them primitive. What surprises about these very early cultures is their very highly developed astronomical knowledge, because priestly wisdom is about applying the divine order that is visible in the sky vault on Earth. This way, earthly chaos is transformed into cosmos, according to the celestial pattern. We can see this very early on in so-called primitive monuments. We can also be humans by going forth from the sacred center that is at the heart of our community and conquer the periphery. This is a military aristocratic way, and its goal is the same ordering of chaos, the furthering of divine influences from the center towards the periphery. The great historic empires were about this, about creating on Earth a cosmos that is an ordering space. These empires rest on the foundation of willpower. Finally, in our times, we see the rise of the social order that caters to the material desires. Its appearance and triumph is no accident. It comes after the exhaustion of previous higher possibilities, and is just as legitimate as any other social order after the fall. This is a very simple and schematic description of the cycle so far, but it should be clear that none of its moments is here to last, so any success in any given domain will be temporary. To idealize one moment or the other of this becoming is a sign of ignorance of the whole, and to try to fix history in any one of these idealized moments is ill-advised. The cycle has to follow its course, and as long as the cycle is unfolding, there can be no rest for the human soul, there can be no definitive happiness. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumb up and share it with your friends. If you have observations to make, or you think that I glossed over something that should have been said, or you think that I'm simply wrong, share that in the comment box.